Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our virtual town hall today. We're just going to give it a few more minutes before we get started. Just another minute here and we'll get started, folks. Okay. Good morning, Penticton. My name is Joanne Klebb, and I lead the Community Engagement Program for the City of Penticton. Today, we are having a virtual open house to discuss a proposal for a childcare facility in Kiwanis Park. And I just want to thank you all for joining us today. We are experimenting with more online tools in light of some of the restrictions with the pandemic, and we'd welcome your feedback on how well this format works for you as we get going as well. So as I mentioned, my name's Joanne. I have Couple of colleagues here with me today to support this presentation. Adam Goodwin is our social development specialist and Nicole Capewell is a planner. We also have some representatives from One Sky Community Resources who will be available to answer questions. We have Tanya Bahardian, Tracy Ingebrigtsen, and Chris Allen. So our goal today is just to give you an overview of the proposal, as well as an overview of the zoning amendment that's required to allow this proposal to proceed. And we also want to give you a chance to ask any questions you may have. And just in terms of how we participate, so we have both a Zoom meeting and a Facebook Live function running at the same time. We're hoping that we'll let the presentation run its course and we'll answer your questions at the end. We'd like to invite you to enter the questions in the chat function if you're in the Zoom meeting, or the comment function on Facebook, and I will do my best to follow those questions and share them with our presenters once the presentation is over. And with that, I am going to turn the presentation over to Adam Goodwin to give us an overview of the proposal. All right, Adam, I'm going to need you to unmute your microphone. Just give Adam another second here.
There we go. Sorry about that. Good morning, everyone. My name is Adam Goodwin. I work in social development at the City of Penticton, and I'll be providing a bit of background on the Edmonton Avenue project. As you're maybe well aware, there's a strong demand for additional childcare in Penticton. So there's City of Penticton's heard lots from the community, through the media, from various community partners about the shortage of childcare spaces in the community, with in particular around the infant to 3-year-olds and before and after school care. The City of Penticton is currently completing a childcare assessment and action plan, and we provided some of the preliminary results of that. So from parents, over 80% of parents are having a difficult time finding childcare in the community. Nearly half have been on a wait list for over a year. When we went and surveyed childcare providers, again, nearly 90% of them have a wait list of children, and of those, about 80% of children are on the provider's wait list for at least 6 months or more. In July 2019, the City of Penticton received a letter from the Ministry of Children and Family Development at the province of BC, and they invited the City of Penticton to look at the Childcare BC New Spaces Funds. And this is part of the province's goal of creating 22,000 new childcare spaces in the province. Under the provincial grants, applicants can apply for up to $3 million in capital funding per per project. And with this, there's no matching contribution required from the municipality or other partners who are part of the project. When the city received the letter from the ministry, staff started to complete a review of different city lands. Through this review, Kiwanis Park was identified as a strong opportunity. It has 2 aging city-owned childcare facilities on it, and through a report done in 2013 for the city, it was recognized that both of these facilities were in poor condition, and so therefore there might be an opportunity to look at replacing the Edmonton Avenue Centre with a new facility and more childcare spaces. The City of Penticton City Council supported the city submitting an application to the Childcare BC New Spaces Fund to build a new childcare facility at Kiwanis Park. The city went through an expression of interest process to see if a community partner would be interested in working with the city on this application. One Sky Community Resources, as Joanne mentioned, several of their staff are on the call this morning, was the successful applicant in that. The city and One Sky submitted a grant application in May and recently found out that Penticton was successful in receiving $2.9 million for the Edmonton Avenue project. This is one of the early artist renderings of what the facility could look like. This is from standing on Edmonton Avenue and looking towards the site. So as you can see, I wanted to highlight some of the natural light that would come in through the roof as one of the energy efficiencies that are built in to the facility. And the main entrance would be from Edmonton Avenue. This is another artist rendering, standing in the laneway that runs parallel to Edmonton Avenue behind the site. As you can see in the foreground is the playground, and then that's what the current conceptual design of the back of the facility would look like. And again, I wanted to highlight some of the energy efficiencies that are being built into this project. So along the roof, you can see some different solar panels and so forth to help with the energy consumption of the building. This is a draft facility plan. We did want to note it is subject to change, but this is what it currently looks like. And so I'll just quickly walk through it. If you kind of start at the top, it says Room A. So that's for 0 to 3-year-olds, and so that's the youngest children that will be at the center. Going down slightly is Room B, and that's for 3 to 5-year-olds. And then Room C and Room D along the back, that's for pre and after school aged children. As you can see, kind of in the top left corner of the facility plan, there are public washrooms currently built into the facility. So for example, Kiwanis Park has a baseball field as well. It has the playground on the back of the site as well. Currently, the public washrooms are in that location, but we are exploring, as I'll touch on momentarily. We're working with Safety Village to see what opportunities exist on the larger Kiwanis Park site. And those washrooms might move as we do work in partnership with Safety Village on what exciting opportunities can come for them out of this larger project. This is the overall draft site plan, just to kind of show a bit of a higher level view of everything. So as you can see, the new center is along Edmonton Avenue with a small playground just above that. And that will be for the younger children. And then again, behind the building, you can see the playground, as well as some staff parking spaces that will be on site to ensure that staff who are working at the center have parking available. As mentioned, obviously Safety Village is a close neighbor of this project, and we are working with them as well to see what exciting opportunities can come out of this. As part of the larger project, the Triumph's Triumph's Child Care Center will be eventually demolished. That's one of the aging facilities that does need to be removed, as it is in poor condition, as well as the washroom building that's kind of just north of the staff parking. It straddles kind of the Child Care Center property and the Safety Village property. That will be demolished eventually as part of the larger project as well. Again, through that 2013 review of the buildings, it is an older building and is in need of to be demolished. There are some benefits of the project. So as mentioned, 3 city buildings have reached the end of their life. With buildings that old, it's very expensive to maintain them. So by replacing them with newer facility buildings or demolishing them, the city will be saving significant costs around operating dollars. The new center will use the existing sites, which will preserve as much green space as possible within Kiwanis Park. The playgrounds will be open to the public with the exception of the Little Play Space A. That's the one along Edmonton Avenue. That's for the younger children. And then lastly, one of the benefits is around the fact that this will be provincially funded, so no municipal tax dollars will be needed for the capital construction, as well as I mentioned, this will add 116 new childcare spaces in Penticton. As we discussed at the beginning, these are much needed spaces in the community to meet current demand. We do recognize there are some impacts of the proposal as well. And so parking and congestion can be a challenge, particularly during drop-off and pickup. As mentioned, there will be a washroom building that will be eventually demolished. And as we noted, we are working with Safety Village and other users of the park to find opportunities to ensure there are washrooms, public washrooms available for Safety Village, as well as people playing baseball and other park users. And that does touch on the last point on the slide, as well as we are currently working with Safety Village on what opportunities this does bring, as well as to better understand what impacts this may have on their operations and how the city can work in partnership with Safety Village on different solutions. So I did see a question pop up about the Little Triumphs building, so this slide might help answer that. So with One Sky, we are currently developing a plan to transition the existing spaces that are in the Edmonton Avenue Centre over the coming months. Eventually, the existing Edmonton Avenue Centre is slated for demolition in the summer of 2021, so in about 6 months' time. Shortly thereafter, construction will begin, and that will take approximately 11 months. And then we do anticipate currently with the current construction schedule that the building, the new center will open in summer 2022. And then we do anticipate that would be when Little Triumph's facility would be demolished at this time.
Thanks so much, Adam. We just had a couple of questions, and before that, maybe we'll ask before you move on. And we will also return and have you at the end of the presentation. We had one interesting question. There are some folks out there that don't actually know what the Safety Village is. Do you think you could describe that for us?
Absolutely. That's a great question. And so Safety Village, and I know so it shares a site, and so it's an opportunity for families and young children to learn about how to be safe around different transportation modes. So there's several small buildings on there, as well as a road network on sites, and they have little transportation modes. So young children, for example, can come and practice, what a stop sign means or how to safely use a crosswalk in the community. And so by supporting them from a little young age, the hope is, as they grow up, they continue to practice good road and transportation safety to ensure the community stays as safe as possible.
Okay, we have another question that's come from a couple of folks, and they'd like to know what is happening to the footprints of the building once demolished, specifically Little Triumphs.
What will happen to Little Triumphs?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great question. And so currently, that is something that we are exploring as kind of the larger opportunity with Kiwanis Park. So for example, nothing's been decided at this point, but just to give some examples of things we are looking at, that's an opportunity that we are exploring with Safety Village, for example, to see if they might have use for that space. But as mentioned, no decisions have been made on that at this time.
Okay, we're continuing to get some really good questions about the proposal specifically. So I think it makes sense for us to kind of continue to take advantage of Adam's time. And if we need to, we can also bring in our friends with One Sky. Another one that I'd like to bring forward is we have a resident in the area who lives on Nelson, and their home backs onto the alley. It's a small alley with one-way traffic, and it's difficult to navigate. Are there any plans to widen the alley to make it two-way?
At this time, that has not been part of the discussion, but as Joanne mentioned, one of the purposes of this session is to learn of the questions and the concerns of the neighborhood. So that's something that I'm happy to bring back to the project team and discuss, but at this time, that's not something we have explored. But as mentioned, that's a great question, something I will bring back for sure.
Thanks for that, Adam. We also have a question about if the largest need is for 0 to 3, why is the before and after school program consuming the largest square footage? And could those programs not be coordinated through existing schools and sites with strong start programs that has rooms not used during those times? And so if that one is better suited for One Sky, you just say the word, Adam, and I believe I can unmute Tanya if she's available to help with that one.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think Tanya would be a great person to answer that. I will say with the younger children, a higher level of qualification and training are needed. And something that's been identified through the City of Penticton's assessment and action plan on childcare is that as new spaces are being created, we will need to work with local education providers on ensuring that there are qualified trained staff in the community that can work on those spaces. And so as the 0 to 3-year-olds are some of the age groups that need the most qualified staff. So we do need to balance introducing those new spaces in terms of the physical space with ensuring that there are staff available as well to actually work in those spaces. But I think Tanya would be a great individual to add to that as well.
Hi, Tanya. So I've given you the option of coming in if you'd like to add any comments to what Adam said.
Yeah, super. I would like to add a couple of questions. I think, first of all, in terms of the city's needs assessment, those two biggest needs were around that infant toddler and the before and after school care. And I sort of wanted to also build on Adam's comments around staff qualifications. And I see there's other questions coming later on about the availability of childcare staff. And so One of the pieces within One Sky that we have done as we have early childhood educators, we've also taken an approach of trying to develop people to get those extra credentials that Adam spoke about in terms of people moving towards infant toddler, because we know there is a great need for infant toddler spaces and the qualified staff to provide those services. So we've been able to do that successfully. And also, I guess the other piece I would add just around working with schools and other spaces, I think that has been a consideration for us over the years. We've been involved in providing childcare for over 40 years. Right now, what we're hearing from the schools is that they don't have available classroom space for childcare. I don't know, Tracy, if you wanted to add. Tracy also was on the call from One Sky. I don't know if you wanted to add anything else, Tracy, about that.
I'll just unmute Tracy in the event that she would like to add something. And what we'll do, folks, is we'll record all of these questions and produce a Q&A that we'll make available on our Shape Your City site. So please keep them coming. Okay. I'm not sure we're going to be able to get Tracy on, but I think that perhaps we'll carry on. There's some more good questions coming in, and another one that I think is probably better suited to Tanya. We received a question about the number of spaces and whether or not these are new spaces, additional spaces. Can you give us some clarity on what the 116 represents?
Yeah, they are new spaces, and it's a great question. The provincial funding was actually tied to the creation of new spaces. So you could see in Adam's presentation that part of our transition plan is looking for that space to relocate the existing spaces so that the building can be demolished for the new spaces. So in terms of the breakdown of those spaces, was that part of the question, Joanne?
Yeah, just understanding, is this incorporating the existing spaces that are provided by Little Triumphs as well as the existing after school spaces, or again, net new?
Yes, net new. So the requirement for the grant is that they be new spaces.
Perfect. So we received another question about the availability of early child care or early childhood educators to staff the spots. People are concerned that while it's great that we're doing all this work to add spaces, how are we going to staff these facilities? Do you have any thoughts on that, Tanya?
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly it's a challenge, not just for us in the area or in the region, but a provincial challenge. So we've been working with Okanagan College around looking at some creative options to try and introduce some programming for early childhood educators. And the college has been really excellent in terms of discussing with us creative ways about how we might get those new programs rather than in the traditional format. I think the other piece, I guess, is just around recruitment, retention, and developing people. And from the One Sky perspective, I mean, we really want to focus on recruiting good folks, but also we really have invested in people to help them. You know, perhaps they have early childhood assistant status, and we've really helped them to qualify for their early childhood education or to move from an early childhood educator to an infant toddler.
Great. And then we have another question regarding impacts for the safety village. And the question is that the building is more than a washroom block. It also houses a classroom and bike storage. And does the city have any plans to address these needs that allows the safety village to be viable? I think I'll put that one back over to Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. As mentioned throughout the presentation, this is a great opportunity to work with Safety Village as well on the larger kind of Kiwanis Park area to see what exciting opportunities can be completed over the next few years as the Edmonton Avenue project progresses. And so we are quite excited about that opportunity as well to see how we can support Safety Village. As noted, back in 2013 with that building report, the 3 city buildings on the site are in poor condition and do need to be redeveloped. And so we recognize that that those do need redevelopment, and so that's why we do want to work with Safety Village on this opportunity as well.
Great. I'm seeing more questions about numbers, and I think that following this presentation that I will work with the project team to kind of lay out what the whole story is on spaces available in the city, what this project will do for those spaces, so that we have just a nice whole response to that. We did get one more question related to the proposal that I would like to bring up, and then it looks like we're getting zoning questions, so we'll just queue up Nicole to answer do her overview. Merle on Facebook has asked about if the playground equipment can be included in the grant, and I think that one would be an Adam one. Yeah.
Hi Merle, thank you for the question. Yes, it can be. Equipment is an eligible expense under the province's grant.
Okay, perfect. Oh, sorry, Shelby has snuck in with one more on construction, and then I am going to turn it over to Nicole, and we'll take more questions at the end. And so Shelby has just inquired about when is construction expected to be complete and the child care center open?
Absolutely. So Shelby, thank you for the question. On the last slide about the transition plan, currently, we do anticipate construction starting in this upcoming summer, so about 6 months, and it will take about 11 to 12 months to complete. So the anticipated grand opening would be in summer 2022.
Okay, and I've got another question for the proposal, but I'm going to save that one for the end, and I'm going to turn it over to Nicole now to help people understand what the application for a zoning amendment means for this proposal. So I think you should have the control of the screen, and Nicole, if you're able to unmute, you should be able to get started.
Thanks, Joanne. So we're just going to move into the zoning amendment that is proposed for the property to allow for this proposal to move forward. The current zoning that's on the properties that we're talking about today is P2, which is a parks and recreation zone under our zoning bylaw. It allows for parks, recreation, and open space, but doesn't list daycare as a permitted use. The city is seeking a site-specific rezoning that would allow for a daycare to be permitted. And what this means is that daycare would be added as a permitted use only to these particular properties. So site-specific means that we're only going to allow for a daycare on the properties here on Edmonton Avenue, and it doesn't apply to all park zones across the city. So we are being just specific for this particular project at this time. The properties that we are looking at for the rezoning would apply to 470, 490, and 500 Edmonton Avenue. And I did see a question about a lot line adjustment in there. So what the city will be doing is once the rezoning, should the rezoning move forward, it would apply a daycare as a permitted use to these 3 properties. Following the rezoning, the city would be completing what we call a lot consolidation. So we would essentially dissolve those property lines and create one large parcel, and daycare would be permitted across all of those areas. So the area that's outlined in the red dots here would be the zone that would now allow for, in addition to the park uses that are already allowed, it would just allow for a daycare. So we're not changing it away from a park zone. It does still maintain that park zoning and that park intent, and just adding a daycare as a permitted use. So these properties do currently contain childcare uses, which have existed on the property for over 30 years. They have been a permitted use for a long time. However, because the city is looking to rebuild a new structure, we must go through a zoning amendment before a building permit for a new structure could be issued. Here are some images of the existing structures on the property, again showing that childcare has been a use that's long occurring on the property. And these are two maps that display the zoning and our official community plan future land use designations for the property as well as the surrounding areas. The park is located within an established residential area of the city and provides recreational opportunities to the surrounding properties and also has access from the KVR trail. The property is currently designated by our city's official community plan as parks, which envisions this space to remain as a public park and public space for the future. Our parkland protection and use policy is a tool that we use when any changes are occurring to the use or long-term lease of parkland in the city. This process requires additional oversight from the city's Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee, as well as additional public consultation. As the lands that we're looking at are considered public lands, the policy requires engagement so that the public can provide input on how a change of use for a park may impact them. And we are following this policy process for the proposal in front of us today. Here's a flow chart showing a little bit more detail about what the process for this parkland protection and use policy outlines. So this proposal on Edmonton Avenue, you will see we have gone through some of the first steps and we are currently going through our public participation requirement. After our public participation is completed, we're going to collect some of those results and we will share them with our Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee and additionally share them with council and the public. A formal public hearing will occur for the rezoning and council will ultimately make a decision on the zoning amendment. Staff are recommending support for the site-specific rezoning to allow for a daycare as a permitted use on these properties, as we consider it to be aligned with the official community plan future land use designation on the property. Childcare is a use that's often associated with recreational spaces such as parks and playgrounds. We often see daycares utilizing these services that are already existing on our parks. Our official community plan provides policy to have support for social supports in the community, including childcare facilities for our residents, businesses, and workers. The proposal is also in line with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, as it maintains the park and its recreational amenities, and also is attempting and adjusting to meet the needs of our residents as our community grows.
Thanks so much, Nicole. We're getting some more questions here. And let me just see if I can. I think you may have addressed this. So there are questions about the need to consolidate the lots and why would we consolidate the lots? And the question is, are there future plans that aren't being discussed at this point, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. So when we're looking at proposing a new structure, because the lots, there are 3 lots that we're looking at right now, and the existing Edmonton facility, or the actual building that we use right now, it actually, what we call it straddles property lines. So it is crossing over 2 different properties. And before we can issue any building permit for a new structure, we are required to adjust that so that the building can meet our setbacks for those properties. And so what we're proposing to do would be to consolidate those and just remove the property lines, and then it would allow us to have a building permit issued for those properties.
Okay, another question we received that might be going back to Tanya, and that is, will admissions be connected to any particular school? Is a wait list going to be started now or soon?
You know what, I will turn that one over to Tracy if she's accessible. Tracy Ingridson is our childcare team leader and oversees all of our childcare programs. Tracy, are you available?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh, there we go, perfect.
Okay, so One Sky has a wait list. Our wait list is all of our centers are on it. So when you phone into One Sky and placed on the wait list, you actually get placed on all of ours. So when a spot comes up, you're called, and then at that time you're given the choice of the center or to wait for the center that you're actually wanting. So we currently have a wait list, and we are already taking names for the new center. So people can call in and we can get them on the wait list sooner than later, as we do have about a year to a year and a half wait list for our infants and toddlers.
Okay, perfect. There's a question about why are we making recommendations before the Parks Advisory Committee has seen this. So the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee has been kept informed about this proposal since it was first conceived. Staff is going to be presenting the results of this engagement process as well as their suggestions to the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee for them to consider, and then it's ultimately up to the committee what recommendation they would like to make to council.
Joanne, can I just add to that?
Sure.
This engagement process was endorsed by the committee as well. In 2019, when, as Joanne mentioned, when this project was conceptualized based on the province's letter. So they gave, Joanne went with the idea of what engagement would look like, and they endorsed to move forward with that. So this engagement process is under the support of that committee. And as Joanne mentioned, they are well aware of the proposal and the work that is taking place.
So I see Michael Hodges has a question around the zoning and suggesting that what we're proposing would make it possible for the city to redevelop the entire site without engagement with the community or following the Parks and Recreation, it says master plan process, but I think it might mean the Parkland Protection and Use Policy. Nicole, did you want to answer that one, or else I can also answer that one?
I can provide a little bit, I suppose, for this. So the proposal that we're bringing forward today is I would say, the current proposal. But if something in the future was to occur, I would imagine that we would be required to bring that back, whether the policy requires us to go through this exact same process again. And maybe, Joanne, if you're more familiar with that policy, what would trigger us to go through this same process again in the future?
Yeah, if I understand what the application is, we're seeking to add a use, new use to this site-specific application. The Parkland Protection and Use Policy, as I understand it, has a number of triggers that would require the same process, including any kind of changes to the footprint. So it'd be very difficult for the city to introduce any new developments on this property without triggering that process. Okay. Are there any more questions about the proposal? I think that we might have captured them all. And oh, there's one more from Tina Lee. Is demolition of buildings that are not part of the child care facility allowable within the grant? And I might turn that over to Adam.
While the city and One Sky were developing the proposal to the province that was submitted in May, city staff were in close contact on a weekly basis with the ministry to ensure that the full plans would be supported by the ministry. During development, the ministry staff did support the city's plan in terms of the entire project and indicated that all those costs would be eligible. Costs under the $2.9 million capital grant.
Okay, and I think we have one more question that might be for Tracy, and it's are names on the existing wait list going to be prioritized for the new spots, or do we have to reapply for the new list?
So anyone who is currently on the wait list is automatically moved to the new spaces. Their wait list, like I said, it's a consolidated wait list. So anyone who is on our current wait list will have priority, and anyone new goes at the bottom of our wait list.
Okay, perfect. Okay, folks, I'm not seeing any new questions coming in. So with that, I will thank all of our panelists who joined us today to answer questions. Oh, wait, one more snuck in at the end here. The question is from Brendan Phillips. Are there any particular amenities that this new facility will provide that the old facilities couldn't? And I wonder if maybe Adam might speak to the fact that about the condition of the building to your knowledge, and then maybe, well, actually, I'll just turn it over to Adam.
Thanks, Brendan, for your question. By amenity, could you just quickly type what you mean by amenities? So I can speak, as you do that, I just, the reason I'm asking, I just want to make sure I fully answer your question. And so, as noted, the current building that was identified in 2013 as being in poor condition would be replaced. And maybe Chris Allen, one of the architects working on this, can speak to the energy standards at which it will be built to. But it will be built to very high energy standards to ensure that the new facility is as energy efficient as possible. And as noted, some of the windows along the roof, some of the solar panels that are being built in, some of the way that the roof lines are to provide natural shade to the building are examples of what Chris's team is looking at to ensure that the building's as energy efficient as possible. So that's one example of where, you know, the capability of the building will be enhanced. There will be the public washrooms will be enhanced as well. The new public washrooms will be have better supports and services for individuals as well. Another enhancement in terms of level of care specifically is I'd probably ask Tanya or her team to kind of comment specifically around the operations of what level of care would be provided through this project.
Sorry, Adam, could you say again what the question?
Yeah, Brendan was just asking about if this new building will have an improved level of care available.
In terms of, I wonder if Brendan can clarify the question.
So what I see, Brennan's comments, he says services or capabilities such as internet systems or other features that can improve the levels of care available. Will it be a more wired building, more modern technologies and included in the design or in the operation?
Yeah, I guess the comment that I would make at this juncture is we always want to try to, you know, when you have the opportunity to build a new facility, it's really exciting, and the opportunity to incorporate, you know, features that are leading edge would be an opportunity. And so the things that we could consider in that way and that would fall within the grant, I think we would want to try to consider as many of those types of opportunities as we could. So that's what I could add at this point. And I see Chris has his hand up. He may want to add some other pieces as well.
Sure, I can add Chris as well, and I've just unmuted Brennan so that he could maybe clarify his question further as well.
Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Wonderful. All right, so I'll try and be more clear. I was asking more specifically on the lines from the old facilities because they're old and are out of date. I believe 30 years was anyway, less important. With this building a new facility, are there any features, new kind of stuff that ideally would like to be included into the design and construction of it that simply aren't available to the old facilities. Does that make sense?
So I can respond a little bit. So at the beginning of the project, we certainly did look at the existing building to see if that building could be renovated. The staff from One Sky pointed out all of the deficiencies with the building. So it's not really an insulated building, it's concrete block. The windows are old and needing replacement. It was initially built in a bit of a hole, so they have issues with water running into the building and flooding it intermittently. And it does have, given the vintage of the building, it has asbestos in many of the materials. So overall, even though it's an interesting building in some ways, the cost of renovating it would be as high as replacement, and you wouldn't get as good of a end result. So our first impulse is always to renovate where it's possible, but it just didn't seem to be possible or practical. So the new building provides new childcare spaces. That's the main advantage of it. But it is a follow-up building to one that we did at Okanagan College, which was a certified passive house and which was called the most energy efficient building in Canada. So it will be a very energy efficient new building. It will have modern lighting, wiring, internet connections. So just in general, a lot more natural light, a lot more openness from the childcare spaces to the playgrounds. So in general, it will be designed specifically for childcare, and so should be a big improvement over the space that's there now.
Does that help, Brennan?
That I think that does. Thank you.
Great, thanks. Just a few more questions here. There's a question around what further engagement is being planned given less than 24 hours notice of this session, and what are the timelines around the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee. I would offer that this session has been promoted on our social media channels as well as in the newspapers. So we did send out a notice from our Shape Your City system last night to make sure that people had the links. In terms of other engagement, so we have mailed letters to all of the residents in the surrounding area to make sure they were aware that aware of this proposal and opportunities to get involved and reach out to us. We are planning on putting display materials at the Edmonton Avenue Center for both on the inside and the outside so that people can learn more about the proposal and opportunities to get involved. We did have an open house planned for next week that we've now had to cancel in light of the orders from the Provincial Health Authority. So I think we're just going to gauge what type of response we get over the next several days to determine if any further engagement activities are required. And I might just ask Nicole to come in terms of timing around the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee and next steps from a statutory perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Tina, for the question. So once the public participation is completed, the results will be shared with our Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. I am actually not sure at this time what their 2021 calendar looks like, if it would be going to a meeting in January or if they will be able to make it to a December Parks Advisory meeting. And then with regards to the public hearing, we are anticipating it to be the first public hearing in January 2021. Our 2021 council meeting has been set that January 19th will be our first council meeting in January. However, we are usually holding our public hearings on Monday evenings to accommodate for some of our COVID-19 additional spacing requirements, keeping in mind that just this past week we have received some additional restrictions for that. So my best recommendation at this time would be to really watch on our City of Penticton webpage. We have a public notices page on there that does give notice to the community about any public hearings that will be occurring. And just given the changes that are happening from the province, we are kind of adjusting as we go on the fly with what those changes are. So my best recommendation for you is to really just watch that page. For public hearings, we also mail notices to property owners within 45 meters of a property. You will get a notice right in your mailbox. We also advertise it, as mentioned, on our city website, and we do put notices in the newspaper. So as long as you are keeping your eyes open a little bit, you should hopefully see something and ways to participate, whether we're able to have you in person or if it's through Zoom video chat or on the phone. You will be able to give your input to our council as well.
Thanks, Nicole. I have a couple of more questions that I think are better suited to perhaps Tanya or Chris even. The first one, or actually the first one might be more for Tracy. There's Sally Atwell through Facebook would like to know what the contact is to get the name on the list. How do people go about getting their names on the list?
They can call One Sky directly and they will transfer you to our waitlist staff person that handles it all.
Perfect. And then we have April through our Zoom meeting. She'd like to understand if the new facility would have indoor play spaces the way Little Triumphs used to have when it was in the now activity center. That might be a Tanya question.
I'm not too sure what she's meaning from the comment. We have our classrooms, but we won't have a big gym if that's what the question is. So we currently have a gym, but we wouldn't have that space. We'd have bigger classroom spaces.
Okay. I'll just give April a chance to clarify if she would like to do that. And no, April's fine with that answer. And then we have another question from Brennan around, given the scale of the impact of this proposal, would it not merit a larger mail out radius? And I'll turn that one back to Nicole to talk about the different mechanisms the city uses for notifications and what future notifications are also going to be expected.
Yeah, thanks, Brennan, for the question. The 45 meters is the distance that we do set in our bylaw. So I would say it is our minimum radius that we use for mailouts for any rezoning applications. That is a good question of whether or not we should review having a larger mailout radius. And it's definitely something that we can look at expanding slightly because of the impacts of this particular rezoning. And we can certainly take that and provide it to our management and see if they would like to expand the radius further. So thank you for the comment.
And if I could just clarify as well, Nicole, so this initial mail out we did as in addition to what we would normally be required to through the rezoning process, right? So should this go the next step, then there will be that statutory requirement for notices and signage. This was an effort to make sure the surrounding community was aware of this proposal and opportunities to get involved.
Yeah, that's correct. So I believe the majority of people that may have heard about this would have received an info package in their mailbox directly to them. We did expand that out from the 45-meter radius that we would be required to do for rezoning. So it's certainly something we could consider just using that same list that we did before. But I do also encourage people to keep an eye on our website. It's definitely just because something's not happening that you might get a mail in your mailbox, you're definitely able to still provide comments for us, and we do still look for the comments from our community as a whole.
Great, thanks, Nicole. We have another question that's going to come back to the team from One Sky. It's a question about the distribution of the new spaces by age. So of the 116, are 50% going to be 0 to 3 and 25% 3 to 5? And how many for the before and after school program?
Tracy, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, sure. So there will be 12 spaces for children 0 to 3, 24 spaces for children 3 to 5, and 60 spaces for after school, as well as spaces for preschool programs.
Okay, perfect. And so I've published the One Sky phone number on the Facebook if anyone wants to reach out to One Sky to get names on the wait list. I'm not seeing any new questions come in. So what I'd just like to kind of wrap it up here. So I encourage you to go to shapeyourcitypenticton.ca. We will produce a Q&A that reflects the questions here and any new questions that come in. And we also have a feedback form on Shape Your City Penticton, where you can let us know your thoughts on not only the proposal, but also the application for a zoning amendment. And you can also always email getconnected@penticton.ca if you have any additional questions about this proposal. And so I'll just thank everyone for participating in today's session. And like I said, please do email if you have any additional questions. All right, have a great weekend, everyone.